Engineering in Tel Aviv. Tonight, we're diving into Israel's economy, its challenges and opportunities, nearly a year and a half after the start of the war. We'll also explore the critical role of education in preparing the next generation to thrive in Israel's economy and beyond. What is STEM education, and how has it evolved over the years? What is Israel doing to inspire a love for STEM in children? And what are the education system and academia doing to equip the young generation with all they need to succeed in a high-tech world? Finally, we'll examine how Israel compares to other countries and showcase some of the latest innovations shaping the future. We have an incredible lineup of speakers, from the founder of Waze and the chairman of the board of the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange to the chair of the National Economic Council and the president of Afeka. This is going to be an exciting event, so let's get started. I'd like to begin by introducing Professor Ami Moyal, president of Afeka Academic College of Engineering in Tel Aviv, to say a few opening remarks.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining Breaking the Code webinar, which will be discussing the importance of the STEM educational continuum and its relevancy to training skilled human capital in Israel. Various exponential changes are changing the world, the society, the economy, the industry, the high-tech, all are changing in a growing pace. STEM educational continuum main role would be to train skilled and relevant human capital that will assist us in developing the economy and the high-tech industry. I would like to thank the speakers, ILTV as our partners, and you, the audience, for participating in this webinar, and I hope it will assist in developing a relevant STEM educational system. Thank you and enjoy the webinar.
To start our event, we'll take a macroeconomic look at Israel and the global economy. For that, we're honored to welcome Professor Avi Simhon, head of the National Economic Council, the body that advises the Prime Minister on key economic decisions, coordinates strategic initiatives, and plays a crucial role in shaping government policy. Please join me in welcoming Professor Simhon. How are you doing?
Thank you for the invitation.
Now, Israel's economy has faced significant challenges due to the ongoing war and global economic shifts. From your perspective, what are the key macroeconomic trends shaping Israel's economic future in the next 5 years?
Actually, there are no trends. There's one, and that's the high-tech sector. Israel right now has a high-tech sector which is much larger proportionally to any other country. There's no other country that has so many people employed in the high-tech sector as in Israel, and that's by far the leading sector.
Now, how do this trend, the one trend that you named, the high-tech industry, align with what we're seeing worldwide? Do you see this in other countries as well?
No. So again, in Israel, we have much more high-tech than any other country. It's more than 10% of GDP, but you know, when you say 10%, it sounds okay. It's only 10%, but no, this 10% actually it's more than 10% of GDP. It's 10% of the people employed, something like 15% of GDP. But it's not just 15% of GDP, because it brings here all the foreign currency that we need to operate a modern economy. So it gives a lot of flexibility to the economy. It provides lots of tax revenues, lots of foreign currency, and also a kind of a clout, because many countries look at us and they say, we want to be like you, and that's very important.
Now, historically, our economy has experienced post-war booms. Do you anticipate a similar economic resurgence for Israel after this war? Why or why not?
Well, you know, this is not just an operation. It's not like the second Lebanon war, after which there was a boom. The second Lebanon war lasted for, I don't know, a couple of weeks. It's a very long war. And to say the truth, after the Yom Kippur War, which was even tougher than this one, much tougher than this one in many respects. After the Yom Kippur War, we've suffered something like 10 years of recession. I wouldn't say recession, but there were 10 difficult years after the Yom Kippur War. So a war on its own does not guarantee a boom.
Well, I want to switch over to STEM for a moment. Many economists are arguing that a strong STEM education system is directly linked to economic growth. From your perspective, how do you see STEM education influencing Israel's economic trajectory, and what role should policymakers play in strengthening this connection?
Sure. So the fact that the Israeli economy is based on high tech means that we need lots and lots of very highly trained engineers. You say STEM, but mainly computer sciences, computer engineering, electrical engineering. So I would like to be a little bit more focused than just saying STEM. We need that. And what the National Economic Council did a couple of years ago was to get a lot of money that was allocated directly to that. So we told the universities have the freedom to teach whatever they want. But we told them, fine, you have this freedom, but if you train more computer engineers, we'll give you a lot of money per student. And they reacted immediately. This is a government decision that we passed in 2017. They immediately reacted because they want the money, and are now teaching many more students in computer sciences and electrical engineering, which is what fuels the high-tech sector. So that's extremely important, and we need to maintain it this way.
Well, sure, but Professor Simhom, there's still often a disconnect between academic research and the needs of industry. How can Israel's universities and research institutions better align with the demands of the high-tech and broader economy?
So I don't think there is disconnect. It's not always the same. It doesn't overlap perfectly, but it's not disconnected. Why? Because the universities want students to come, and students would come if they can study something that would reward them when they go to the labor market, when they look for a job. So the universities have to react to what the industry needs. But again, it's not a perfect overlapping, and this is where the government is entering. And as I told you in the previous question, is giving the universities money. Well, first they get a lot of money. They get a lot of money, and they teach with that lot of money whatever they want. This is academic freedom. But we give them an additional amount to teach the kind of things that we feel are needed for the Israeli economy.
With global competition for top talent intensifying, how can Israel ensure that it continues to develop and retain the highly skilled workforce needed to sustain economic innovation and growth?
Yeah, you're right. There's a global competition over those talented people. So first, one way to keep them here is to also bring over companies that would compete on their talent elsewhere. So this is why Google, Microsoft, Amazon, NVIDIA, other big techs have very, very large research centers in Israel. And, you know, at the end, it's Israelis who want to live in Israel, and we have to make sure that they want to live in Israel. This is how we keep them here and give those companies and those people the conditions that would make their stay here as good as possible. This is why, for example, we wouldn't like to see increase in tax rates that would cause people to move to a place where tax rates are lower.
Well, now I want to shift over to skills. How critical is the development of skills beyond just degrees for boosting productivity and driving economic growth in Israel? Are there specific skills that you believe are most essential for the future of the economy and the high-tech sector?
People need to be creative. Creativity is the most sought for skill. And again, those departments in universities that teach things that are required in the industry, specifically, mainly computer sciences, electrical engineering, statistics, physics, mathematics.
How can Israel train more qualified human capital?
At the end, it's very simple. It's universities. Universities train the kind of people that would be productive. And this is why we should make sure that the universities face the right incentives to teach those people. But there's no way around it. It's the universities that train the best, most qualified people.
Now, technological advancements from AI to automation are reshaping industries worldwide. What policies or initiatives should Israel prioritize to ensure that technological disruption leads to economic opportunity rather than job displacement?
So, first of all, try to minimize on regulation. Try to get the economic incentives to operate freely, meaning free markets, free access to foreign markets, free movement of people, and again, good education system.
Well, Professor Simhon, thank you so much for your analysis today. Next, we turn to the changing state of high-tech and its dependence on human capital. Israel is facing an annual shortage of 13,000 engineers and software developers. How can we train more people to fill these critical roles? And what skills do they need to ensure they not only succeed, but also drive Israel's economy forward? To explore these questions, we're joined by Professor Eugene Kanzel, the Emil Spire Professor of Economics and Finance at the Hebrew University. He is a member of the university's Center for the Study of Rationality, a research fellow at the Center for Economic Policy and Research in London, and a fellow of the European Corporate Governance Institute. He is also the chairman of the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Professor Kanzel served as the head of the National Economic Council and economic advisor to the Prime Minister, playing a key role in shaping Israel's economic policy. From 2015 to 2021, he was the CEO of Startup Nation Central, a nonprofit dedicated to strengthening Israel's innovation ecosystem and connecting global leaders to Israeli technology solutions. Beyond his leadership in academia and policy, he has advised governments, corporations, and organizations worldwide and served as on the Israeli Antitrust Court. Welcome, Professor Kanzel.
Hi, nice to be here.
Now, Professor, the success of Israel's high-tech sector depends heavily on a steady supply of highly skilled engineers and technologists. Are we producing enough STEM graduates to meet industry demand? And what should we be doing to close any gaps?
Well, actually, we produce a lot of STEM graduates. There were several initiatives that increased that, both at the end of the 1990s and then in the 2014-15. The problem is that with the advance of technology and AI, it is no longer the question of numbers, but the quality, which is most important, and of course, the number of quality candidates. Because in the past, we said, well, we need programmers, let's open some colleges, let's produce mass production of STEM. And it was okay And then we ran out again, and then we started boot camps. And then it was potentially okay as well. But the problem is that looking forward, the intermediate STEM skills would be rather rapidly replaced by AI. So we can no longer just say, well, let's take a person and get them through 6 months course and will be okay for the rest of their lives. That's not going to happen. So we need to think about much more creative ideas.
And speaking of that, many industry leaders are actually arguing that traditional degrees are not keeping pace with the needs of today's workforce. How can competency-based education and alternative training models help Israel's high-tech sector remain competitive?
Well, it's not just the degrees; it's the people that are coming out of education system, then going to higher education, and then the higher education sort of forms, finishes their education. So the academy, if you look at the academy, it creates three products. It creates ideas through research. It trains future researchers, and it trains employees for technological companies. Okay, so, or non-technological, technological employees for technological companies and non-technological companies. The interesting thing is that the research and the training of future research should not be driven by the industry current needs. That's not going to be good. But in training employees, we basically train the future researchers and training future employees in many cases in the same program. And that is problematic because in training the employees of technology companies, there's got to be much closer relationship between the industry and the academy than there currently is. And this needs to be improved.
Global tech companies are increasingly poaching Israeli talent or encouraging them to work abroad. How can Israel retain its best engineers and entrepreneurs?
Well, we've been actually making this relatively unpopular statement for a while now, probably close to a decade. And it was fun watching all these Israeli companies acquired by foreign corporations and turned into R&D centers. What that meant is not only that the tech people are moving into international companies, but also that a lot of jobs are disappearing that are supporting like business functions, et cetera, because all of them are being siphoned and shipped to overseas. So while large technological companies played a very important role and continue to play a very important role in the development of Israeli ecosystem, it's the question of how many is too many. And when we moved from 50 R&D centers in Israel in 2000 to over 400 in 2017-18, somewhere in the middle we crossed that line. And so because in some sense, it's similar to these large corporates taking oxygen out of the startup ecosystem because the startups can't compete. And so, and the value that accrues to Israeli economy is therefore diminished. So the government has to act on that, but it has to be very, very smart and careful so it doesn't throw the baby with the water, because we do need these companies here. We do need many of them. We just don't need that many.
Now, you yourself have worked extensively in both academia and the private sector. How can we better align academic research, university curricula, and industry needs to ensure that graduates are more job ready?
I'll tell you a story. When I was the CEO of Startup Nation Central, which is an NGO focused on promoting technological innovation, Israeli technological innovation in the world, we started on a journey of trying to take the populations that are not reaching the core tech, like women from the Haredi sector, from the ultra-Orthodox sector, and Arab graduates. These were people who were graduating computer sciences, some of them in top universities, some of them in colleges, and they were basically unemployed. They would be sending hundreds of resumes and not getting anything. And so we started a program which was called Excellent Team. And this program was taking these graduates, we were screening with them, we were screening them, identifying very good candidates and running a program for 4 months. It was not a boot camp, it was teaching them how to be a developer in a tech company. And the reason we were able to do that is because we started the whole process with the companies. Again, we went with the companies and they helped us choose the right candidates, to develop conditions or criteria for choosing them. They helped us build curriculum. They helped us build the soft skills of these graduates. And so within 4 months, we had an amazing placement record. So which shows that if you introduce all of those things within the academia, rather than after the graduation, you can get much, much better results, because we did it with the most difficult populations that the tech world was not familiar with. And we got them into the top positions in a variety of companies.
Now, I do know that other countries are really aggressively investing in tech and innovation and the workforce development. What policy recommendations would you make to ensure that Israel stays ahead in the global high-tech race today?
Well, AI is actually, from the point of view of employees, the AI is pretty scary, because it basically replaces a lot of intermediate skills, from skills of acquiring information, processing information, deriving results, etc., but also skills in tech. Today AI could write a marketing report. AI could write a program. It's no longer in its infancy, but it's still not there. But it's advancing in giant steps. And usually these steps are, it's sort of a plateau, and then there's a giant step, and then again plateau. So we have to be ready for the fact that a lot of people may become redundant. And so you need to train employable people. That's people who have comparative advantage over employable people in other countries. Because imagine if AI generates structural unemployment, there will be a huge fight between countries on who is getting the employable people and who's getting the unemployable people. Okay, that will drive the country's economies. And so we have to change our attitude, because currently we don't even think about it in our education system and academic training. We need to really think hard what kind of person has to emerge after high school and after the college degree in order to be within the employable ranks of the world employees, and not in the ranks of the redundant.
Now, I do think it's important to speak about the impact of the war. Do you believe Israel's high-tech sector will fully recover or even flourish after the war? How do you think the large number of young people who served in the reserves will influence the type of innovation Israel produces in the coming years?
Well, I believe that Israeli innovation ecosystem will flourish not because of the war or after the war, but if we derive the right policies to help it flourish. Because currently, the competition for the ecosystems is very, very strong around the world. And the competitors are not the companies. The competitors for the development of ecosystems are the governments, because it is the government that can provide the environment in which the innovation ecosystem can flourish and will flourish, and not instead of moving to another location. Okay, and unfortunately, Israeli government is not yet to understand fully that it is in a cutthroat competition. It has this feeling that since we have this ecosystem, it will always be here. And so anytime you talk to sort of broader government, I'm not talking specifically like innovation authority or something, those people are focused on this every day, but the broader government is not yet there in even an understanding that there is a very, very tough competition that it's in. So the war itself, I don't think that reservists particularly will influence innovation, apart from one type. The war itself will definitely affect innovation defense tech, and we're already seeing that. I mean, it's being modified and adopted and developed as we speak. But the AI part, anything that has to do with AI, will have to have government investments, and quite significant ones in infrastructure. And I hope that dealing with the economics of war will not prevent such investment.
Now, we happen to be speaking today very soon after an acquisition of $32 billion acquisition, in fact, of Wiz by Google. It was a historic moment for Israel's tech sector. What does this milestone signal about the strength of Israeli innovation?
Well, first of all, as we say, Mazel Tov. It's a great achievement and shows that Israeli ingenuity continues and follows the route of the tradition of Mobileye and Mellanox, which are the companies that grew in Israel and that were acquired by technological giants, and those turned them into even bigger companies. But it also shows the darker side, which is that Israel is not currently able to build standalone giant companies. So that needs to be, like following my previous comment about the government strategy and competition, we have to think about it. What kind of conditions, and these conditions include labor laws, securities laws, corporate laws, tax laws, etc., that would make it possible for Israel to grow huge companies, just like Finland, which is a small country, grew Nokia at some point. Okay, we don't seem to be able to grow a giant company. There are pluses to that, there is minuses to that, but we at least have to be able to do that. As an event, this is not a memento. This is just an isolated event, and there will be others, but we can't look at them as, wow, here we have the white knight on the shining armor on a white horse, and that is going to solve the problems, and this is, we don't need to do anything. The tax authority, who was very unhappy about 8 months ago when we turned down $23 billion offer, I'm sure that today they're much happier.
For sure. Well, Professor Kandel, thank you so much for being with us today.
Of course, was happy to be here, and have a good day.
What did we do before Waze? Honestly, I was always lost. If you've ever found yourself making wrong turns or stuck in unexpected traffic, you're not alone. Israel is home to countless startups that have changed our lives, and Waze is certainly one of them. That's why this next moment is one many of you have been waiting for, an interview with Uri Levine, the co-founder of Waze. Uri recently released an updated edition of his book, Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Solution, a handbook for entrepreneurs. Today, he'll share his insights from that book on the future of innovation in his talk titled High Tech 2025, A Personal Perspective. So let's give a warm welcome to Uri. Glad to have you here. Now, your book, Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Solution, emphasizes problem-driven innovation. What's a common mistake entrepreneurs make when they focus too much on solutions rather than identifying the problem?
I definitely agree. Look, entrepreneurship journey is about value creation. And at the end of the day, the simplest way to create value is solve a problem. And therefore, this is where the essence of the book, Fall in Love with the Problem, not the solution, coming from, right? So in general, I would say always start with the problem. Think of a problem, a big problem, something that is worth solving, something that the world will become a better place if you solve that. And then ask yourself, so who has this problem? You know, if you happen to be the only person on the planet with this problem, then go to a therapist, way cheaper and faster than building a startup. But if a lot of people actually have this problem, what you really want to do next is go and speak with those people and understand their perception of the problem, and only then go and build a solution. Now, if you follow this path and your solution works, it's guaranteed that you are creating value. And this is the essence of the journey of building a startup. In addition, your story is going to be way more compelling. Just imagine that we will go back into 2007, just before I started Waze, and I will tell you that I'm going to build an AI crowdsource-based navigation system. And you're going to say, oh yeah, very interesting, but you don't care. If I will tell you that I'm going to help you to avoid traffic jams, then you do care. And when your customer care, they want you to be successful, and they are going to help you to become successful. So the essence of falling in love with the problem, not the solution, is simply about value creation.
Now, Waze disrupted the navigation industry by leveraging crowdsourced data. In today's startup landscape, where AI and automation dominate, what are the next big opportunities for disruptive problem solving?
So look, disruption is when you change behavior, right? This is not about technology. In general, I would say that the main reason that Waze disrupted the industry was not because of the crowdsource. The crowdsource was an enabler, but it was free. And free is the biggest disruption of all, right? So Gmail is free. Before that, we used to pay money to have a mailbox. Waze is free. And before that, we actually used to pay money in order to have a navigation system or navigation device or navigation app. And so the pricing might be the biggest disruption of all. And sometimes it's about new technology. And in general, I would say if you want to ask yourself which industries are ripe for disruption, then start by asking yourself, what is it that we are doing in the same way that our parents did? That is ready for disruption.
Now, you've built and advised multiple startups. What are the core drivers of success that separate a good idea from a billion-dollar company?
So look, we all know that at the end of the day, building a company, building a startup is a very long journey. It's a long roller coaster journey of failures. So at the end of the day, if it's a problem worth solving and the CEO and the team are the right team, then it's way more likely to be successful. And for a second, I would say the most important behaviors of successful CEO for startup is number one, never give up. No matter what happened, keep on fighting uphill, regardless how the roller coaster journey is, never give up. Right? The second one is make a hard decision with conviction, because it turns out to be that in many cases we are trying to do everything, and no, we need to focus. And focus is not about what we are doing, it's actually about what we are not doing. These are the hard choices. And so if we will have someone that the management or the CEO behaves with those specific behaviors and the problem is worth solving, then dramatically increase the likelihood of being successful.
Now, I want to jump into STEM education and the future of high tech. Israel has been called the startup nation, but with a global shortage of engineers, and including, of course, a shortage here in Israel, do you think our current STEM education system is enough to sustain future innovation? If not, what needs to change?
So for a second, I would say I went to school the same way that my parents did, right? I just earlier say that this is definitely ready for disruption. I don't know exactly what is it that we need to disrupt, but definitely we need to teach the next generation completely different skills, right? Completely different skills. For example, making mistakes, right? Making errors and mistakes and actually overcome them. Adaptability is something that is really, really important, right? Because if you think about history, my grandfather had one job throughout his entire lifetime, right? And obviously today is so much different, right? So adaptability is something that is a skill that is really, really important. One of the things that makes Israel very unique is actually the mandatory military service that developed skills that beforehand may not have been developed, right? And so, for example, working in teams, leadership, never give up, right? Never give up. We mentioned that as one of the most important behavior of successful entrepreneurs, right? And those skills happen to be as a derivative of the mandatory military service that we have. And so Israel, I think that even though that we still need more engineers, and definitely we should encourage more engineers, still have major gap in its ecosystem on top of many other ecosystems around the globe.
Now, speaking specifically of engineers or STEM graduates, are there any specific skills that you feel they need to have?
creativity is probably one, but I would say back to basic, right? Don't give up, keep on trying. Failing is not a badge of shame. It's actually an opportunity to grow, right? And an opportunity to try again and again and again. And the more attempts that we are making, we simply increase the likelihood of being successful.
Now, AI is transforming the tech landscape. Do you think that AI will replace the need for traditional coding skills, or will programming always be an essential foundation for innovation?
So for now, I see AI as a major increase in productivity tool, right? So every software developer is using AI to generate code, and they are generating more code than before, right? And so the increase is actually in the productivity. Is that something that eventually going to replace us? I doubt.
How important do you feel it is that industry, academia, and the educational system communicate with each other?
Look, I think this is critical, right? So if we think about the basic four cornerstones for entrepreneurship ecosystem, then one of them, of course, is entrepreneurs, right? And entrepreneurs is, by and large, I would say an entrepreneur will go into the journey of entrepreneurship as soon as the passion for change is way higher than the fear of failure and the alternative cost. And the good news is that the fear of failure in Israel is relatively low. The second cornerstones will be investors, right? And so that's a rule or role of the regulator to reduce the barriers for investors to invest. And I think that Israel is actually in a pretty good shape in that as well. The third one is engineers, and we are in good shape there as well. And the fourth one, which actually made the leapfrogs in the Israeli ecosystem in the last decade, is experience. The second-time entrepreneur is way more likely to be successful, regardless what happened on the first journey. And when you bring this experience back to the market, you end up with having a way more mature ecosystem. And if Waze was acquired by Google, 11 years ago for $1.1 billion, then today we might have a new deal with Waze, which is north of $30 billion, which is absolutely amazing. And this is certainly an indication of evolutions of the ecosystem.
For sure. Now, I do want to get a little bit more advice from you. You founded Waze at a time when the GPS was already well established. What's your advice to younger entrepreneurs who are trying to break into industries already dominated by big players?
So at the end of the day, you need to figure out what is your value proposition, who is your target audience, and what is the value proposition. Waze was very different than traditional GPS, right? We address the local commuters, right? The daily commuters, those that are going to their office every day, right? And we basically offer them a completely different service, not how to get to a place that you know how to get there, but what is the fastest route and how long it's going to take you. And so a completely different use case. And the result is that we ended up with an application that people are using every day and multiple times a day. Whereas Google Maps, you usually would use Google Maps when you need to go to a place that you don't know how to get there. And that is way less times a day. And so the real difference was not about, we are building a navigation system or we are building another GPS system. We were focusing on a different use case. And if you're building something that is already exist, then ask yourself, why are you different? And you are different. You should be different from the user perspective, not from whatever your product is doing, right? The user perspective, the value proposition should be different. Better doesn't cut it. Different does.
So what are the key traits or habits of successful entrepreneurs? If somebody watching this says, wow, I want to be like Ori Levine, where should they start?
Start with a problem, right? And we already established that. But then the next thing that you need to realize is about the journey, right? And the journey is going to be a long roller coaster journey of failures. And when you realize that this is going to be a journey of failure, look, we're trying to build something new that no one did before. And obviously, we think that we know exactly what we're doing, but the reality is that we don't. So we try one thing and another thing and another thing, and eventually we find the right thing. If you realize that this is going to be a journey of failures, then I would say two things. Number one, if you're afraid to fail, in reality, you already failed because you're not going to try. Albert Einstein used to say that if you haven't failed, that's because you haven't tried new things before. And the second one is that you want to fail fast, because when you fail fast, you still have plenty of time and plenty of resources to make another attempt and another attempt and another attempt and increase the likelihood of being successful. And this is really, really dramatic. And so if on top of that, so we started with the realization, okay, this is, you have to start with the problem, because the problem is the simplest way to create value, or solving the problem is the simplest way. Then realize that this is going to be a roller coaster journey, long journey, and a journey of failure. So don't be afraid to fail. And then the third one is long journey, right? And it's the longest part is until you figure out product market fit. And product market fit is very simple. That means that you create value to your customers. And it takes a long while to get there. Now, at the end of the day, if we realize that if you don't figure out product market fit, you will die. As simple as that. You never heard of a company that did not figure out product market fit. But if you think of companies that did, right, and for a second, I would say, think of all the applications that you're using every day, from driving with Waze, searching Google, using WhatsApp, Netflix, whatever it is, and ask yourself, what is the difference between any of those today and the first time that you have used that? And the answer is that there is no difference. So we are using Waze today the same way that we used Waze for the first time in our life. We're using Google the same way that we are used Google for the first time in our life. So once a company figure out their product market fit, which is the value that they create to their customers, they don't change that anymore. And this is really, really important. How long did it take them to get there? Oh, we don't know, because beforehand, we never heard a name. For Microsoft, it was 5 years. For Waze, it was actually 4 years. For Netflix, it was 10 years. So figuring out product market fit is a long journey. Even if you'll tell me, oh, today with AI, everything is different. ChatGPT just started. Not really. OpenAI is almost 9 years old. It was more than 6 years until we heard the name for the first time in our life. Now, once you realize that product market fit is going to be the first part of the journey, and it's a very long one, then the most important part is to understand what is the metric for product market fit. There's only one metric: retention. Look, it's really simple. If you create value, they will come back. If they are not coming back, that means that we are not creating value, and we need to keep on iterate and iterate and iterate and iterate until we are able to create value and until our retentions are becoming pretty good.
So, last question. With increased competition from global tech hubs, what must Israel do to maintain its edge as a world leader in innovation?
I would say we are a decade ahead most of the other hubs, right? Obviously, except of Silicon Valley and some places in the US. But if you think of Europe or Latin America or Asia or any other place, we are a decade ahead. And what makes the difference is two factors, right? So assume for a second that that investment is available in multiple markets, right? And there are good engineers in many places, right? And even though that we have very good schools of engineering, we are not the only one. What makes unique the Israeli ecosystem is, number one, the number of entrepreneurs. We still have 10 times more entrepreneurs per capita than any other ecosystem in the world except Silicon Valley, right? But if you think of the US as an entire, then we still have 10 times more. And number two, which actually creates a significant advantage over other ecosystem, is experience, right? The fact that we have already decades of successful startups, and those entrepreneurs are going back and helping other startups to become more successful. This experience creates a more significant gap with our ecosystem. And the third one is the mandatory military service, right? That creates a new pool of people that already took risks when they were young, and they are therefore ready to take more risks and start a startup.
Well, thank you so much for your analysis today.
Thank you. Thank you.
For our next interview, we're bringing in an international perspective with a special guest from the United States, Jan Morrison. Jan is the founder and senior partner of the Teaching Institute for Excellence in STEM, or TIES. She has also served as senior consultant for college-ready STEM education and post-secondary success at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, among many other roles in education and innovation. Today, she'll share her insights in a session titled An International Perspective, the STEM Educational Continuum. Interviewing her is ILTV anchor Lidar Gravey-Lazi. Let's welcome Jan Morrison.
And joining me now is Jan Morrison. Jan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited about the opportunity.
So your organization focuses on creating infrastructure rather than specific programs. Can you maybe share with us what are the key components of a successful STEM education ecosystem, and how do you sort of tailor them for different countries and different communities?
Well, thanks so much for the question. First of all, an ecosystem is really the important word in all of this. An ecosystem indicates that partners are interdependent, that communities that have all kinds of assets work together so that their opportunities are a single opportunity, but everybody has a role and responsibility. When you're talking about STEM education, regardless of who you're educating, whether it's in the periphery, whether it's in Tel Aviv, wherever you happen to be, you could be in Cairo. All education should be generated from the idea of what the need is for the children and eventually from the young adults, and what the role is of the community in educating. The reality is, it isn't just a school's responsibility or an administration's responsibility or even a Ministry of Education's responsibility to educate our children. It is everybody's responsibility. And that's the theory behind the designing work that goes on in ecosystems. STEM is very important because it is science, technology, engineering, and math at the very basis, but it is also design, emergent technologies, computational thinking and literacy, and many more. I hope that's helpful.
Absolutely. And you've worked with countries like Egypt, Kenya, and Iceland. So, what are the biggest challenges in sort of adapting STEM education across such different cultural, linguistic, and economic landscapes? And how do you turn those differences into strengths?
I think you've nailed it. It's a linguistic issue. Our languages are different, and our cultures and our languages support our cultures. You have to be there. You have to do things and activities and design with populations, not for them. It is really their opportunity to do that kind of design work for themselves. It's important for the communities to learn how to design, how to solve their problems, how to bring the best of their own assets to the problem itself. What we do is we facilitate. Design has been around a long time. Whether you're designing the pyramids have been designed that way, whether it's the Vatican, whether it's big new buildings in Tel Aviv, it's all the design process. And that serves all of us really very well.
And you emphasize that STEM education should start early, well before students enter the workforce. So what are the most effective ways to integrate, these real-world skills into K through 12 education so students are prepared for the demands of the economy?
Well, I actually would say pre-K-12. I think the littlest of hands at 3 years old have the ability to tinker, to take up something and in their mind to solve it, to move across their midline, to use their hands, gross motor, fine motor coordination, to build. We've seen children of the youngest ages using Lego or blocks, and they're on swing sets and they're creating all kinds of things. All of that's absolutely critical to the building of the opportunity to be in physics or in engineering or whatever it is later in life. So I think when you're talking about that, talking about a STEM education, it isn't just the fact that you learn your academics, your mathematics or chemistry or whatever the algorithms are. It's the fact that we make use of them and we learn how from the beginning to tinker with them.
And how can competency-based education improve the STEM educational continuum?
I don't think you can separate them. I think as human beings in a world on this planet, I think competencies and what those durable skills are always part of what we talk about in STEM education and in solving problems and developing innovations. Whether you're talking about critical thinking or whatever the durable skill is, or if you're talking about skills that are specific to the different sectors like advanced manufacturing, which might include welding, or if you're talking about biotech, it doesn't matter. I think the reality is the whole idea of skills includes those durable skills as well as the knowledge-based part of the skills. And I think we have to be sure that we have both going on. And I think that's why we have disaggregated this into durable skills and then others. But it is always important that for the user, it feels smooth and seamless so that they understand what they're learning and why they're learning it.
And how much of a need is there for sort of cross-sector partnerships in shaping a successful STEM initiative? Can you maybe share an example of a partnership that has significantly impacted STEM education and economic development?
I think that's such a great question because it's not a natural question in our world. We don't automatically think of business and industry having a role in a community or with educators. But let me give you an example. There's a wonderful example in upstate New York in which Micron, which is one of the largest semiconductors industries, businesses in our world, was trying to decide where they were going to put their plant. And they were thinking about upstate New York. There's a beautiful STEM ecosystem in East Syracuse, Minoa, right outside of Syracuse. And they got involved with the economic development group there in helping Micron decide whether or not that was a good place. Micron has such a great partnership now with that ecosystem that they felt comfortable in putting the plant there because they know not just intuitively, but with reality that there will be a workforce that they can tap from and have a partnership with, and therefore it was smart to put their plant there. And that's an ecosystem move.
And many traditional teaching methods today, they fail to engage students in STEM. What are the most effective pedagogical strategies for keeping students engaged and ensuring they develop the right problem-solving skills?
I think you give them real problems that they care about. When the Egypt schools were developed from the very beginning, there was a capstone approach to the engagement of kids with their environment. In Egypt, in Cairo, urban congestion is a huge problem. So what their capstone problem, or one of them, is urban congestion. It's a phenomenal mathematics opportunity. It's laminar flow at its best. So it's physics as well. And that kind of real world opportunities that students care about, that isn't just found, those problems are just found at the back of their books, but they come to the heart of what they really believe, then you got it. Then you have them engaged, and they then become agents of their own education. And STEM just lives and breathes.
And so, as you mentioned before, the earlier the better when it comes to STEM education. So what steps could and should educators take to ensure that students gain this sort of hands-on, minds-on experience from this early age?
Well, I think Israel has got a phenomenal example of this. Lockheed Martin created with the Ministry of Education Mata Kids, which is the Lockheed Martin kindergartens, STEM kindergartens. And I think there are 30 of them now, or there were to be 30, will be 30 in Israel. That's an example of STEM meeting the preschool. It's an example of how parents get involved, how the community is involved, and kids can tinker within the curriculum that is part of the Ministry of Education. It's a beautiful example for our whole planet.
Well, Jan Morrison, thank you so much for your insights today and for taking the time to speak with us.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a delight, and I'm always ready to talk about STEM and children, no matter what. It's an important topic. Thank you again.
Finally, we close with a message from Professor Ami Moyal, president of Afeka Academic College of Engineering in Tel Aviv. Professor Moyal holds a PhD in electrical and computer engineering from Ben-Gurion University of the Negev, and he's an expert in automatic speech recognition. Before becoming president, he founded and led the Afeka Center for Language Processing and served as head of the School of Electrical Engineering. Prior to Afeka, Professor Moyal spent 15 years in Israeli high-tech at NSC, Natural Speech Communication Ltd., a speech recognition service provider and product developer, where he led various leadership roles, including VP of Technology, VP of Business Development, and ultimately, CEO. Professor Moyal's unique experience across research, industry, and education has enabled him to lead the development and implementation of an innovative, competency-based educational model which equips engineering students at Afeka with the knowledge, skills, and values needed for industry success, an approach that has gained both national and international recognition. Tonight, he will address an important topic, competency-based STEM education. What is it, and how can it work? Let's go visit Professor Moyal at Afeka College.
What if education wasn't only about time spent in a classroom, but about mastering the skills that matter in and out of that classroom? Competency-based STEM education flips the traditional model. Instead of simply transferring knowledge, students advance once they prove they've acquired the skills needed to apply the knowledge to effectively solve problems. It's relevant, dynamic, and focused on real-world application, especially crucial in fast-moving fields like science, technology, math, and of course, engineering.
We are talking a lot about project-based learning, PBL. Instead of giving a lecture of 3 hours where all students are taking a nap, they are divided to groups and doing a project, and they are very active. We have another example which is called flipped classes. Instead of delivering the knowledge in class, the students are asked to read papers in English at home, and then in class you digest the material and talk only about the difficulties, the difficult issues that they discovered in the papers that they want to better understand in a communication mode. So you develop critical thinking and effective communications.
At Afeka Academic College of Engineering in Tel Aviv, it's more than theory. Students build portfolios, tackle real-world problems, and work across disciplines, preparing them not just for jobs, but for innovation.
Every teacher or lecturer knows what's the best pedagogy to achieve the learning goals of his course. And the learning goals are knowledge and also skills. So we have built on a strategic level engines of change, Center for Innovative Teaching, Center for Innovative Learning, a lot of technology surrounding. So we are providing the lecturers everything that they need in order to ease the implementation of the change.
Afeka is moving to a new campus, designed not just to support competency-based learning, but to help it thrive.
The new pedagogy dictates that we need a completely different set of learning environments. There will be a lot of open spaces. It will be a completely different campus. It's not going to be lines of classes. A lot of open spaces to do projects. Our main role is to be an example of the need to change the educational process from the aspect of quality, specifically instilling skills in the educational process, because academia need to change. And I think we can be a nice reference to analyze and to learn from.
Employers are already taking notice. Graduates walk away with the competencies to succeed and the confidence to lead.
We are part of the college revolution. We are talking to high-tech companies to receive feedback on the graduate profile. We are listening to what the high-tech industry is saying. This is something that we can see the progress year by year. I can tell you that 10 years ago when I entered office, there were companies that declare that they are not hiring graduates from colleges. Okay? You know what I did? I asked for a meeting with the CEO of the company. And I shared my experience coming from the high-tech industry, but I'm very happy that today we don't have it, and I think that our graduates are appreciated by the industry, but we will continue to support them.
Competency-based STEM education is not just a trend, it's a transformation. Competency-based STEM education needs to be embedded throughout the entire educational journey, from preschool through academia. The vision is broad, transforming how we educate future scientists, engineers, and innovators at every stage. And at Afeka, it's already happening.
We need to think strategically on a multi-year basis. What are the engines of growth that will make Israel secure and strong? And with this aspect, the economy, the high-tech industry, and the engineers are a major trajectory, and engineers as the only resource that we have. You know, in Israel, we don't have resources. We have only the human capital. So the investment in the engineers and growing and quality will flourish the economy.
Thank you for joining us tonight for this important webinar. We hope it was both insightful and inspiring, giving you a deeper understanding of Israel's economy, where it stands today, and where it could go with the right investment in engineers and STEM education. You can find this episode along with key highlights on our YouTube page and across our social media platforms in the coming days, as well as on Ynet News. Before you go, don't forget to scan the QR code below to sign up for the Afeka newsletter. Stay updated on opportunities to engage with Afeka and its leadership, including Professor Ami Moyal,